Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Saturday, July 12th, 2025. And man, there's a lot of news already, and it's the weekend. It's crazy. In England, they won't hire British nurses, and the nurses are being trained because the NHS is screaming that they need nurses, but they won't hire them. Isn't that weird? Isn't that something strange? Isn't that also happening in Canada? Isn't it weird? And in Canada, the solution is, of course, we've got to streamline our system, our immigration system, to allow foreign nurses and other healthcare workers to immediately work in our system. And I worry that this is a foreshadowing thing for Canada. It's going to get worse. I hope I'm wrong about that. I really do hope I'm wrong about that. Alberta gives a date to have the smut out of schools. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. More reactions to the United States tariffs. And we're going to start with trade and what's going on with that. Carney's set a meeting, and I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced they're taking it seriously. Carney did this previously and got slapped around a bit, and I think he's going to get slapped around a bit more. Carney's conflict of interest public disclosure is out, and that's interesting. Evan Solomon says business and government go hand in hand. And when I first started this channel, I used to go through CPAC, and I would go through the highlights of videos. I would do like a 45-minute video. I'd watch the whole video and give people key points of the video with time indexes. So before the show this morning, and it is right now 7 o'clock in the morning, I was watching this Evan Solomon AI thing, and it's jaw-dropping what they're doing. They're giving $100 million away to a bunch of businesses, AI businesses. Big companies are getting this money. And I don't think they have a real goal. I don't think they have, we would like you to accomplish X. Maybe we would like you to accomplish 15-minute city oversight, something like that. But that's not public, right? But they don't have a stated goal as far as I understand it. Just be really productive. Help us be more productive. Thanks, AI. Thanks for solving our problem. And that's not how AI works in my opinion. So we'll see how this whole thing rolls out. But there's some really, really scary quotes coming from that, including the title of today's show. And so, yikes. He uses war euphemisms a lot throughout the speech and saying, like, we're in a crisis. We have to act fast. We have to do this now or we won't have a Canadian economy. I've got Evan Solomon saying, if we don't do this and give all this money, if we don't do this, there's not going to be a Canadian economy. And I think that's probably irresponsible of a minister to say. I don't know. Especially when he's talking about his own ministry. I think it's weird. Anyway, so that's weird. $100 million for AI. Yeah, we talked about that. Huge amounts of wasted money on bad policy and distractions. Bongino. Man, we're going to finish the show today on Epstein because there's more fallout. Yesterday I said in a year we'll see how this hurts Trump. But it is eating up the mega Trumpians in his cabinet, right? And across the FBI and things like that. Bongino is feeling the heat and leaving. He's saying Pam Bondi is to blame, and Pam Bondi, I guess Kash Patel for a hot minute last night, it looked like Kash Patel and Bongino may go, but now Kash Patel is going to stay, maybe, and Pam Bondi is probably going to stay, and Dan Bongino is a casualty, and Trump's not going anywhere, so we'll see how this whole thing shakes out. It's going to be wild. Anyway, there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, trade, right? The whole August 1st deadline. And you'd think, man, if there's an August 1st deadline, we've got to move fast. We've got to get in there and figure out what we're going to do. And we can't counter tariff. So how can we counterpunch? In the letter, Trump says, work with me. And this will change. Like, this will be nothing. Don't worry about it. If you work with us and really honestly try to get rid of the fentanyl, then we'll look at these tariffs again, meaning we'll maybe take them off. Right. But instead, Carney's not going to do anything, not for 11 days, according to Mark. Breaking, Mark Carney just announced an emergency, quote, emergency meeting in 11 days in Huntsville, Muskoka. That means 2 full weeks of vacation while he calls the biggest crisis while he calls the biggest crisis in history a hinge moment. This is what leadership, quote, leadership looks like under Mark Carney. And it's the same strategy he used last time. He didn't take it seriously. He didn't respond until it was much too late. And the longer you leave something, the less options you have. Think of a car accident, right? The later you start braking, the less room you have to maneuver, the less likely it is you avoid the thing you were going to bang into. And for us, well, I mean, it's like the Titanic and the iceberg, right? And goodness, Trump is an immovable iceberg, and he says this is what's going to happen. And sure, we've seen history this year talking about when Trump said the tariffs are coming in, and then the tariffs didn't come in. But they eventually did come in, and people then scrambled like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did this. He's been talking about it forever. So we should really take these threats seriously. I don't think it's responsible to ignore it. I don't think it's responsible to say, I've got this 11 days left. We'll meet in 11 days. In 11 days, it is the 23rd, I think, 23rd-ish, right? Like that seems awfully close to August 1st, right? And so no new news for 11 days on this. We'll see how it goes. Fingers crossed. Danielle Smith is responding to the tariffs, and she says the threatened increase to U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods would be a tax on the American people. They would also hurt Canadian and American businesses and workers and damage one of the most important trading and security alliances on Earth. Retaliatory tariffs by the federal government to this escalation would constitute a tax on Canadian consumers and businesses and only weaken Canada's economy further. In addition to continuing trade negotiations, have you seen the price of coffee? That's because of Canada's counter tariffs. The reason the coffee is so expensive is because Mark Carney's counter tariffs. The CPC can't use this stuff? Come on, honestly. Anyway, back to this. In addition to continuing trade negotiations with the United States administration in hopes of a resolution to this trade dispute, the federal government must also immediately drop the Trudeau-era anti-resource development laws, holding our economy back, and work at all haste to approve multiple pipelines, rail expansions, and transmission lines going west, east, and north to diversify and grow our export markets around the world. Just a brief interjection. I forgot to mention this in the intro. The United States posted its first monthly surplus of $27 billion since 2005. And that's all to tariffs, right? And Trump's partnering with people, encouraging people to manufacture in the United States through doing deals with them, calling them up and saying, what do you need to build a factory in the United States? In Canada, we have laws against developing our natural resources. In Canada, we have the government standing in the way of people actually being able to develop and bring us into the modern world. And then they say, we've got to give AI $100 million in order to stay caught up. Otherwise, there won't be a Canadian economy. And sorry, Evan Solomon, I don't want to buy a painting and I don't believe you. So it's very, very interesting. Back to this. We need to become an economically stronger and more independent country without further delay or excuse. It's time to repeal these terrible laws that continue to weaken our economy, make us dependent on a single customer, and hold back the prosperity of our country. Yeah, yep. And if that changes, well, Canada will be prosperous again. What does that even mean? I don't know. Lower taxes, less worry, right? Less worry about what the United States does. But we're not in that position right now. And we have laws that prevent us from moving into that position put in place by the current government. And they're not making any kind of motion to change that while pretending that we can pivot to become an, quote, energy superpower. Okay, solar panels? Are they talking about solar panels? Viva Fry is responding to Chris, and Chris is the CEO of Rumble. He says, the truth is Canada deserves tariffs. Canada does not treat U.S. dairy farmers fairly. They don't allow U.S.-owned banks to become Schedule I banks in Canada, and they block U.S. telecoms to compete for Canadian spectrum. Canadians need to call a spade a spade. President Trump is right. And so that's what Chris thinks. And Viva Fry says Canada deserves more than tariffs. Trump is actually going easy on Canada, but Canadians will never appreciate that because they are too blindly convinced Trump is the problem, not their own government. And again, I've heard rumors that the USMCA is exempt from these tariffs that the USMCA holds, but I haven't seen written confirmation yet. Apparently the plan is very fluid and that could change, but the last news I saw was USMCA was exempt from all of this. So that's probably good news for the economy. But also, we'll see how it goes. That could change, is what I mean. Kirk says it's clear Mark Carney's Liberals had no clue that the tariff increase threat is coming, and they are completely clueless how the negotiations are really going, and perhaps still thinking they can strong-arm things into it in the talks. But I also think Donald Trump's letter, a version of it, was sent to everyone to speed up negotiations and actually get some deals done. So yeah, it's a negotiation tactic. It's a lever. It's a way to move things forward. And supply management, the dairy cartel was brought up in the letter. And I've talked before about how this is a sticking point for Trump. It has been a sticking point for years and years and years. And if people don't recognize that and start addressing that sticking point, it may become worse, like a bunion. I don't know. Can you address a bunion before it gets worse? I don't know. Sorry. Blacklock's reporter, let's move into this economic waste news. Blacklock's reporter is reporting lawyers at CMHC asked a federal judge to seal files on mortgages they inadvertently insured. Whoops. Oh man, slipped, fell, and insured this mortgage right here. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. Laurentian B, after the information commissioner orders their release, harm could occur. I mean, harm could occur if you found out a bank insured a mortgage. I wonder whose mortgage it's going to be, or what class of mortgages is going to be exposed that could cause harm, right? That's quite the statement, right? I'm interested to find out. If we ever find out, maybe a judge will seal it. We'll see, right? Like a Rive scam. Mario says, hi, Mario. My daughter is a dentist in Toronto. She just sent this in our family WhatsApp group. I thought you would like to share this with the other liberal idiots following you. And again, I don't like the wedge thing. The whole point is to blame the other side for the outcome. And I feel like we're all victims in this. We're all having to be subject to this illegitimate government. Anyway, here's what is said in the family WhatsApp group. Now take it with a grain of salt, but is this plausible? I think this is very plausible. Here it is. They signed me up for a refugee program at the dentist office where the refugees are covered at 100% by the government up to $2,000 a year. In dental, in case you're wondering where all your tax money is going. Holy smoke. What? A dentist in Toronto is getting $2,000 a patient, up to $2,000 a patient. So like you've got $2,000 worth of dental room that the government is going to cover, no questions asked. Well, sir, you need dentures. You need this bill that's $1,997. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's very important dental work. We'll see you next year. Wink. Right? Like this is an incentive to look the other way. This is, I don't think this is even really giving people dental. It's giving people dental, but is this necessary dental? Right? I don't know, man. And you can go in and you should probably get second and third opinions for dentist work, right? Like I've had dentists tell me that I'm getting a cavity and I've gone to other dentists and they said, I don't know what he was talking about. So you could get a cavity filled and not have a cavity and then you still have to pay for that work, right? And so I'm not saying all dentists are scammers, but I have seen scammer dentists, right? Are you an anti-dentite? Come on. Okay. Mark says, breaking, Prime Minister Mark Carney just pledged another $4.3 billion to Ukraine. More money to Ukraine? Why are we spending more money to Ukraine? $2 billion in military aid, drones, ammo, and vehicles. Do we make drones now? Do we have a 3D printer printing drones? $2.3 billion loan for infrastructure. That'd be a good business. We could make a little desk thing where you push, I would like a drone and then you can program it while it's being 3D printed. A $2.3 billion loan for infrastructure. Didn't they already default on their loans? Haven't they already said they're bankrupt? Why are we handing $2.3 billion? How long does this money cover? New permanent headquarters in Paris, future coordination cell in Kiev, update on Trump new tariffs can wait until Ukraine is more important. This is part of the announcement, right? And so this is concerning because I feel like it's a massive waste of money and I don't agree with funding foreign wars and foreign countries and headquarters in Paris and things like this. It seems like instead of fixing this problem, they're entrenching this problem, and that's not good. Here is Mark Carney. He says, we've got a lot to build in this country. It's time to spend less as a government so we can invest more in the workers and industries that make Canada strong. That doesn't make any sense. The statement doesn't make any sense. The government has a certain amount of money it can spend to spend on Canada or invest in the workers. It's just one pot of money. Anyway, if you bring down that pot of money, that's less money to spend on the workers. Okay. John says that doesn't math. The central banking WEF member was installed to transform our once prosperous country into a big government socialist hellscape. I think so. To get us so in debt that somebody has to come and buy us up at cents on the dollar, and then we have to repay that debt somehow through international taxes to Europe's army or something like that, or we have to get drafted into Europe's army because we were so in debt and we mismanaged ourselves so badly that we had to get rescued. There's some story in there that they're going to present to the Canadians and say, you guys did this and now you have to suffer. And we're going to be left holding the bag for the decades of globalist waste that are already hung around our necks in the form of high taxes. Food professor says this is our grab bag of governance. And so the food professor says, serious questions to the Carney faithfuls. How can anyone possibly argue that he's doing a great job since becoming prime minister? Canada is now facing more U.S. tariffs, not fewer. The federal deficit could hit $100 billion, a record. He sent Parliament on vacation in the middle of the most significant trade disputes in Canadian history. Please explain. So Carney is failing, and he's failing badly. And there's really no excuse for it. Really none whatsoever. And it's concerning. And people are looking past it. Again, mainly because they have to in order to continue to function, right? And in order to not face the reality of rigged elections, these people don't really represent us. They're not here to help us. They're here to usher us into the next phase of this whole thing, which seems like a communist takeover to me. Andy Lee says, hey, the conflict of interests of Carney's public disclosure is out. So enjoy. So here's one of the pages. It says, I've included this annex as my reasons for including each of these entities below. Entities being screened because I had a management position or an oversight role in respect of their investing activities or prior to January 2025. So he's screened from anything to do with Brookfield Asset Management, Brookfield Renewable, Brookfield Infrastructure, Brookfield Business, Brookfield Global Transaction, Scout, Urban Grid, Avada, Clean Max, Indian Renewable Portfolio, Suvos, Standard Solar, European Distributed Generation, IVI Energia, Solarity, Carbon to Rare Vault JV, Entropy, Interenergy, Infinum, CalBio, Global Battery Energy Portfolio, Cambridge Power, Ontario BESS1, and Texas Battery Storage, Circular Services, Westinghouse, Lanzatech, UPL, and then here's another one, entities being screened because they're Brookfield portfolio companies that appear in the registry of lobbyists maintained by the Office of the Commissioner of Lobbying of Canada. So these companies lobby, and Carney has 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon through Brookfield, right? And so that's North River Midstream, Brookfield BRP Canada Corp, Brookfield LePage Johnson Controls Facility Management Service, and Interpipeline Limited. Well, that's funny. Interpipeline. I wonder if Interpipeline will get any pipeline contracts. And here's the the National Post article about this. Carney to recuse himself from dealings with over 100 companies in sprawling government conflict screen. The screen means that Carney cannot be involved in any official matters or decision-making process that would further either his or the interests of the 103 companies. So how did we get a robber baron in there? Prime Minister Mark Carney will have to recuse himself from any discussions directly involving Brookfield Asset Management, payment processing giant Stripe, and dozens of companies owned or controlled by them as part of an extensive conflict of interest screen. In a disclosure posted Friday afternoon on the Ethics Commissioner's website, Carney said he had agreed with the watchdog's office to set up a conflict of interest screen between himself and Brookfield Asset Management, Brookfield Corporation, Stripe, and any of the 100 other companies owned or controlled by them at the time he set up a blind trust to oversee his assets. Before jumping into politics, Carney was chairman of Brookfield Assets Management, which has $1 trillion in assets under management, and also helped lead efforts to raise capital for 2 major Brookfield's clean energy fund. He was also on Stripe's board of directors. This screen will prevent me from giving preferential treatment to any of the companies while I exercise my official powers, duties, and functions as a reporting public office holder, read Carney's declaration. The screen means that Carney cannot be involved in any official matters or decision-making process that would further either his or the interests of the 103 companies, many of which operate in the renewable energy and real estate sectors. That's the largest scoop I've ever heard of, commented Ian Stedman, a government ethics specialist largest scope, I've ever heard of, who previously worked for Ontario's Integrity Commissioner. I think that they're going to have to get creative to make administration of this screen efficient, said Stedman, now the associate professor at York University. The screen will be administered by Carney's chief of staff, Marc-Andre Blanchard, and clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Sabia, respectively. And Andy Lee's done deep dives on both of these people. And, well, I mean, how much do you trust the government, really? And I mean, the answer is not much. Not much these days. They haven't behaved in a way that they deserve trust. So I think these screens and things look good if you're not thinking, right? And if you are thinking, it seems like a very inefficient way to govern, and it seems like a very inefficient way to protect Canadians from Mark Carney looking out more for his interests than for our interests. And we've already seen, like, he's already pivoted to modular homes, right? So there's no screen in that. Collingwood is talking about the hiring practices in England, and he highlights this. And I just think this is happening in Canada. And because it's happening in Canada, I think it's going to get worse as they, quote, fix the problem. They're going to make it easier to hire foreign nurses and foreign healthcare workers. And as that happens, they're going to start using affirmative action for hiring if they don't already. And I think they probably do. And then once the affirmative action is in place, then exactly what's happening in England will happen in Canada en masse. And the Telegraph is reporting the nurses, the NHS, the National Health Service in England, is crying out for nurses. So why won't they hire us? Students coming off their courses can't find positions despite the field being severely understaffed. Here's the picture of the woman who can't find a job. And I'll give you 3 guesses as to why she can't find a job. And the first 2 don't count. And if you can't see, I'll describe the picture. It's a white woman. Okay, that's the end of the description. So there you go. That's it. And so they're discriminating, and they're calling the discrimination inclusivity and tolerance and everybody being included the same and everybody having a fair shake, but it's not. It's not. It's the opposite of that. It's discrimination. Globe Politics says pessimism, anger still dominate Canadian attitudes towards Americans, poll shows. Globe Politics is lying to you. And they're lying to you to push a narrative that is false. I have been down to the United States. I've talked to other Canadians who have been down to the United States and Canadians who have not been down to the United States, and people who have been down to the United States in the past, right? Visited before and intend to again. And not one person, and I live in a very, very liberal place, has said to me, I'm angry with Americans. I dislike what the Americans are doing. Most of them say, I wonder what our idiot government's up to, because our government seems to be idiots. And like, yeah, I agree with that. But nobody's angry at the United States. You know who I don't blame for all of Canada's problems? Donald Trump. That's who I don't blame. I blame Mark Carney. I blame Marco Mendicino. I blame Justin Trudeau. I don't blame Donald Trump for these things. I blame our idiot leadership, who are all globalists. By the way, they all ascribe to the same ideology that Macron ascribes to, that the leadership in the United Kingdom ascribe to, all of the Western leaders at this point, save probably Donald Trump. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how things play out. I don't know. But it seems very, very strange to put this in the newspaper to drive a wedge between Canadians and our historically very, very close friend, number one trading partner. Like, people all across Canada work with people in the United States every day. And to say, man, those Canadians, everybody's really mad at the United States right now. It's a lie, and it's damaging, and it drives a wedge. It's not true. It's false. And that should inform your opinion of Globe Politics. What are they doing? Why are they doing this? Why are they lying to us? What do they get out of lying to us, right? And money. They get money. They get money from the government. Scott Moe is announcing today MLA Blaine McLeod and MLA Megan Patterson joined Young's Equipment to share some exciting news about our Saskatchewan workforce. Saskatchewan has more people working in Saskatchewan than ever, with 26,300 full-time jobs added in June. Saskatchewan also has the lowest unemployment rate among provinces at 4.9%. With record job creation, major gains in key industries, and bold new workforce strategies, Saskatchewan is building towards a future of growth. So that's good news among not great other news. Here's the real Mr. Bench. He says prices just keep going up. Costco had 4 steaks for $98.46 today. Whatever our government is doing to make life more affordable for Canadians is not working at all. Or is this their end goal? Yeah, they want to phase out red meat. They don't want you to eat red meat. They want you to view red meat as a net negative, and they want to make it so expensive to raise cattle that it's prohibitive. And so people stop doing it, and then you've created a situation where you've effectively outlawed red meat, but you haven't created that law. You've just created laws around it that have the effect of outlawing red meat. And they're playing the long game. It's going to take a couple of years, but when this is $200, nobody's going to buy it. Okay? And then the cattle aren't going to be in demand, and then that's that. And nobody will have that anymore. And globalism wins. And that, I hope I'm wrong. CTV News says Alberta gives schools until October 1st to remove explicit sexual content from libraries. Good. I'm glad. That's good news, everyone. So I hope that they follow through. I hope that they're successful, because kids shouldn't be exposed to pornography in schools. The Carillion is reporting, and this is Games, Page Wizard Games. PageMaster, oh my gosh, I'm getting your name wrong. I'm sorry, man. But in Springfield, there has been overzealous municipal managers, people who are in charge, mayors and things like that, who have been erroneously removing people's ability to record the meetings and saying it's illegal when it's not actually illegal. And so legal standing has been achieved, and these guys have decided to sue the mayor, and that's moving forward, and good for them. Like, it's not easy to do this, and I feel like there would be retribution, but people need to stand up and do these kind of things to bring people back in check, because what they're doing is wrong, and the only way to bring them back in check is to go through these processes. So good job, everyone. And here's what's going on. RM of Springfield sued for banning audio recordings in council chambers. The RM of Springfield is embroiled in a lawsuit by 4 members of the public over the question of whether or not they're allowed to record council meetings. In a notice of application, defendants Daniel Robert Page, that's Page Wizard Games, I'm sorry, man, Karen, Janet, and Gloria, claim that the decision not to allow the public to record council meetings is an infringement on their right to freedom of expression as outlined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Under Section 2B, the Charter states freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication. As part of the freedom of expression, people have the right to record in order to disseminate the news, in order to let people know what's happened in the RM. To put it, a short answer to infringement is that not allowing recording is an infringement of freedom, because freedom of expression, not allowing recording is an infringement of freedom of expression. That's the core of our case, said Charter Advocates Canadian attorney Darren Lung. The notice of application reads that on February 4th, CAO Colleen Draper stated only media are allowed to record council meetings with approval 48 hours prior to the meeting, according to the municipality's procedural bylaw. The bylaw does not state that the public is prohibited from recording the meetings. On February 11th, Mayor Patrick Theron informed the public that cell phone recordings of council were prohibited as it was too disruptive. In this day and age, with phones and small devices, you can do it in a very non-intrusive manner that doesn't obstruct proceedings, said Lung. On March 26th, Page requested 2 days prior to the next scheduled meeting to record, but was denied by Draper. Lung was asked if Page views himself as media, and the response was that the focus was less on the class of person, such as a journalist, and more focused on the act of what Page is trying to do, which is record information about the sessions of council and then letting the community know what happened. Page posts videos of the RM Zoom meetings on YouTube and Facebook. The RM has a bylaw that permitted the public and media to record meetings dependent on approval 72 hours beforehand. That bylaw was replaced in 2019 with a bylaw that took out the public's right to record meetings. In 2023, another bylaw was put into place to remove the video recordings of council meetings from the website and to only have audio posted. Media were still allowed to audio-video the meetings. The RM does live broadcast its meetings on Zoom and posts audio recordings of the meetings within 2 days after the council meeting. The recordings the Carillion listened to were clear, and speakers were reminded to turn on their microphones when addressing council. According to the lawsuit, the Zoom meetings are sometimes inaccessible and of poor audio quality. The audio recordings are deemed by the plaintiffs to be challenging to follow, and the audio is poor. Councillor Mark Miller voted against the ban on recording council meetings by the public, as he feels it's a matter of transparency and accountability. So I'm glad that these guys are doing this. And I hope that they're successful. I hope that it sets a precedent that enables other places to ensure their municipalities and other, middle managers don't overstep their authority. And good for them. Way to stand up for people. It's not easy, I promise you. And then you become a target. It's not good. It's not good. So good for these guys, and I wish you guys luck. John Rustad is responding to. We'll do this first. Here is Evan Solomon claiming that without investing $100 million in AI, there will be no Canadian economy. And I think that that's probably irresponsible for a minister, and not a convincing argument. And what specifically do you want the $100 million to AI to accomplish? Be very specific. He's talking about an anchor and a dolphin. The whole thing is ridiculous. He says business and government go hand in hand, and